Hey everybody, Captain B-Nard back here with another episode of the Captain's Recap. Yes, I am back from vacation and we are here to talk about Week 5 in the Battle Hub Draft League Season 4. And this is going to be the first one of these this season that we're going to be taking a look at current standings, I should say, at the end of this video after we review all the action for Week 5. And here to assist me with that is the right man for the job, the former two-time BHDL champion himself, Raymon. So, Raymon, welcome aboard.
Hello, friends. It's an honor to join the best BHDL analyst, and I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm very excited to uh, shed some insight on the great matches this week.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for the joke. I appreciate that too.
Oh yeah,
BHDL's
always
number one
welcome.
analyst, and I'm happy to have you here because, as a former two-time champion and very, very accomplished competitive battler and draft leaguer, I'll be interested to get your insights into these big Week 5 matches here, and of course, also into the standings as they sit right now here in the BHDL4.
I appreciate your kind words.
Oh, of course.
I will do my best.
Oh, I'm sure you will. I'm sure it'll be good. So yeah, without further ado, we will go ahead and jump right into it here by taking a look at our first match of the week here. And that is going to be the matchup of Scorpion and his Leaf Agents taking on Stefan and his Grand Lake Garchomps. So, looking at these teams on paper, on Scorpion's side, obviously you have the huge threat in the Palafin. Of course, you have the Zapdos, the Ting Lu, the Ogerpon Cornerstone, great power there. The utility of the Cyclizar, the Terra Captains, Delphox, and Primeape. As well, you've got a great utility with the Klefki, and of course, the Mimikyu is always a big X factor. Um, Stack of that up against Stefan's team. He has, of course, the signature mascot, the Garchomp. He's got the Hisuian Samurott, some great power there. He's got the old Rillaboom and Hawlucha Unburdened terrain combo. Terra Captains Tauros and Diancie, of course, very well placed. And then the Munkadori as well, pretty good Mon too. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I really do feel like Scorpion has the advantage here. I think specifically the Palafin puts in a lot of work against Stefan's team. In a previous week, uh, when I was analyzing Stefan's team, it seemed like he had a pretty bad water weakness on the team, and obviously Palafin, being Palafin, can easily exploit that. He does have some stuff like the Rillaboom that might be able to hold it at bay, or Terra Water Diancie, but um, overall, Palafin looks really strong against his team. But yeah, I'm interested to see what you think about this matchup on paper, Ray.
When I was looking through their teams, I noticed that, as you said, Palafin is very strong offensively, and I also want to add that Ogerpon Cornerstone was very powerful, and because it hits Diancie, Skelidurge, Zamrot, right,
Hmm.
very strongly, and defensively, Zapdos was very strong because Rillaboom can't really touch Zapdos, and Zapdos is a good answer to Halucha
Very true.
uh, because it does resist flying and fighting. So I thought that Corpse team is good on paper, and last but not least, Steph couldn't afford, in my opinion, to bring Reggie Lecky because Scorp has Tingle on his team, and I don't think that whatever Reggie Lecky does can hurt Tingle in any way. So
Yeah, I,
that meant like Steph either has a useless Pokemon on the team, and or like he
yeah,
doesn't bring a spinner.
I don't think Reggie Alecki can fire off enough Swifts in the world to touch Ting So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do agree with you there, absolutely. Um, so,
So
yeah,
yeah, I thought Scorp's team looked a lot more stronger
yep,
in this matchup.
definitely fair points. So, as far as the actual match result of the game, we will in fact see that it was Scorpion that did take the win in this one, 5-0. A huge win, very dominating win for Scorpion. Um, I felt like watching this game, aside from the very beginning of the game, it never really felt like, as you would expect from a 5-0 victory typically, it never really felt like Scorpion was in any danger in this game. It felt like he really just kind of controlled the game top to bottom. There was those first couple of turns where there was, jockeying for position, that kind of thing. But other than that, Scorpion pretty much dominated the game top to bottom. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Palafin
I
put in
agree.
a ton of work, as you would expect. Zapdos did as well. But I did, on Stefan's side, I will say I did think he brought some pretty creative sets there, like with the Diancie, for example. But unfortunately, the creativity was not enough to trump the power. But what say you about this game?
Uh, yeah, I agree for the most part. I was a little surprised seeing that Garchomp wasn't loaded dice because, if he had more power on the scale shots, I believe could have broken more Pokemon on Scorp's team. And I believe it was something else, right? Because we did see two and three scale shots.
Yeah,
I also I also think that Tauros with Diancie wasn't as useful because it's like a Terra caption, right? And I think Halucha or Monkey Dory would have put in a little more work than Tauros.
gotcha. Fair enough. Yeah, that is always the caveat when you bring, say you have two Pokemon that both greatly benefit from Terra, and you bring both of them to the same game. It's like obviously both of them can't Terra in the same game, so you kind of have to make that judgment call in the moment and say, okay, like which one of
Yeah,
these
yeah.
do I want to Terra, and then whichever one you don't Terra is gonna kind of be suboptimal in certain situations. So yeah, that's
I
definitely a
believe
danger.
that if Steph did find one turn to Swords Dance with Halucha, it still would have done work. Even
Yeah,
for Zapdos, I think at +2, Stone Edge can one-shot Zapdos.
I believe so. Yes. So. Um,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, a huge victory for Scorpion there as he rolls on. So
Huge victory. Shout out to Scorp for showing off Palafin so well so far.
absolutely 100%. So, but moving on from that game, we are going to go right into our next game here, and that is going to be the matchup of Abomination and the Athabasca Miltanks taking on Lazy Boy and the Sleepy Laxingtons. So, on Abomination's side, nothing really has changed, of course. He's got very bulky offense team, of course, with the Great Tusk, Clefable, Dragonite, Heatran. Um, Strong Terror Captains with the Jolteon and the Vileplume. Of course, the Suicune, more bulky offense, and the Reuniclus as well. Matching that up against Lazy Boy's team, of course, he's got the Darkrai, the Quackleval, the Pecharunt, the Jirachi as well, and the Ursaluna Blood Moon can always be a menace. Um, Terror Captain Mousehold is always something to watch as well. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I do think that Abomination does have the matchup on paper. I think stuff like Great Tusk, obviously, like his just the core of his team. Like the Great Tusk, and then the Dragon Fairy Steel Core with Clefable, Dragonite, and Heatran seems like it could put in a lot of work against Lazy Boy's team. But what do you think about this match, Ray?
When I first looked through their teams, I also noticed how powerful Great Tusk is, mainly offensively, because Lazy's main core is like Petrant or Salona, right? And uh, Jirachi all hit hard and super effectively by Great Tusk.
Yep.
And also the Pokemon that do resist ground and fighting, like Crimtail, uh, I believe like Great Tusk can do a lot of damage with Heavy Slam. So offensively, like nothing could really switch into Great Tusk. And Clefable was also a Pokemon that I expected to do well defensively, mainly with Unaware, because even if Darkrai does Nasty Plot or Quackwaddle Swords Dance, Clefable can with Unaware
Yep.
uh, check both of them very well. And as we did see, right, Clefable took Sludge Bomb from Darkrai very well and did a lot of work. So I believe that on paper, Abomination had the stronger matchup.
Definitely, fair enough. So, unfortunately, we don't 100% know. We do, and we don't know. I'll explain. So, because the actual match result this week is going to be Abomination takes a 3-0 victory via forfeit. Um, Unfortunate situation there, where they had a very lengthy game, as I understand it. And then toward the end of the game, Abomination was winning. He was up relatively significantly over Lazy Boy, and there was an unfortunate disconnect on Lazy Boy's
Yeah,
side.
yeah.
Yep, which led to the game being thrown out, kind of. Um, so they did. I don't know
I
if they.
can, I can, I can get Lazy Boy's unwillingness to start over again.
Yeah.
Ironically, both of us are no strangers to disconnects this season.
Yes, absolutely.
So I
That is
can
very true.
understand why he didn't want to replay all of this again. So
Yes,
I
100%.
don't think there was any ill intent at all from Lazy. Like,
No, yeah, it
yeah.
doesn't seem like it, for sure. But yeah, I didn't. I'll be honest with you. I know Abomination posted his like what he had up until that point. I'll be completely honest. I didn't watch it. No disrespect to Abomination whatsoever, but the reason I didn't really watch it is because, unfortunately, nothing that happened in that game by the rules of the league really counts. As far as
Mm,
numbers, like none of the Pokemon will receive statistics for the game, anything like that, because the game is counted as incomplete. But it definitely looked. I don't know if you watched it or not. If there's anything you want to fill in about it.
yeah, I did watch. Yeah, yeah. Clefable and Great Task, as I predicted, did very well.
Hmm.
So
Gotcha.
it feels nice to be correct about your prediction.
Well, if there's one person that can call it right, it would be the man with the experience, yourself, of course. But
um, thank
um,
you, thank you. Yeah,
yes, but yeah, unfortunate situation. Hopefully, this is the last we see of the disconnect scene here in the BHDL4. As you mentioned, both of us were on the unfortunate end of some disconnect issues early on
yeah.
in the league.
Unfortunately,
Yep, I know Abomination. Actually, I think he when earlier in the league when he was facing Anna had some disconnect issues too. They both did. So yeah. Unfortunately, this season has been a little disconnect heavy, but yeah, and then we with the rules as far as the disconnects go. Obviously, I don't know if everyone knows this, but I just want to state this quickly, that the game essentially knows which party disconnected and which didn't, so it will automatically award the victory to the party that did not disconnect. So, if you're in a situation like we've both been in, like this game has been in this season, essentially what happens is if you get disconnected, you're supposed to try to recreate the game up until the point of disconnect and then continue. However, unfortunately, that is not possible in a lot of situations when the games go, 30, 40 minutes deep. There's hacks, etc.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so yeah, just an unfortunate situation, but we can just hope that going forward we don't have those issues anymore. But yeah, Abomination does take the victory here, 3-0 via forfeit. So
Uh, even with that being said, I think that result wouldn't swing in out of Abomination's favor. It was the question of how much difference he would have won with, right?
yeah, as I understand that game, like I said, I believe Abomination was up significantly, so it would be, if anything, it didn't really look like Lazy Boy had a way to win the game at that
Yeah.
point. As I
So yeah.
understand it, it just was a matter of
So even if
differential.
Abomination got the technical win, he still would have won regardless of that.
Exactly. So, but yeah, moving on from that one, we are going to come to the matchup of Rolder and his Down Under Crocodiles facing off against Cobra and his Too Cool Typhlosions. So, this is an interesting matchup, I think, because these are two coaches that are a little more, and I say this with no disrespect to either one, more up and coming coaches, I would say. As I have dubbed Cobra the Discord's rising star, as he hates, but he is stuck with it at this point because I said it, and I'm the one with the microphone, and he's not. So too bad. Um, so
Yeah, yeah.
anyway, so I was actually very interested in this matchup. I will say this now before I talk about the teams on paper, but unfortunately, this is a game this week that we do not have a replay for, just due to the fact that neither of these coaches upload their matches. So all we really have to go on is the raw numbers and perhaps whatever we could pick off from the chat about the game. Um, but when I look at this matchup on paper, you see the Rolders team obviously has a pretty solid water core, rain core on it that ironically you and I both helped him design, Ray. Um, so,
Yeah,
but
I feel very proud of how his team turned out to be.
Oh, absolutely, me too. I think it came out great. The absolute synergy with the Rain Core, with the Raging Bolt, Pelipper, Manaphy, the Basket
Yeah,
Legion,
yeah,
Overquill,
definitely.
really solid stuff. But pair it with stuff like the Clodsire, the Rabombi is a good
And
pick.
sticky webs. Tailglow
Yes,
Manaphy under sticky webs is so
ab-
strong.
absolute threat. And then, of course, the Terror Captains, Overquill and Hitmonchan are pretty nice. Um, Pair
Yeah.
that against Cobra's team, of course, with the Roaring Moon, the Goldango, the Galarian Wheezing. Of course, he's got the Terror Captains, Dudunsparce and Hisuian Typhlosion. He's also got, interestingly enough, the Hisuian Quillfish to take on the Overquill. And then, of course, the
Yeah, I was. It's sad that we didn't see that matchup because it would have been fun seeing Overquill facing Quillfish.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he's got the Iron Hands too. So, looking at this matchup on paper, to be completely honest with you, I feel like this is a pretty even match because I don't. I'm looking at these teams now, and I don't really see like the Rain seems good, but it doesn't seem overpowering into Cobra's team like it has into other teams. But I also think that because rain, obviously when you use any sort of weather-based team, your Pokemon are going to inevitably share a lot of weaknesses, and those can be exploited by an opponent that knows what they're doing. But I do think this is actually a pretty even matchup on paper. But what do you make of it?
It looks more even than the previous matchups, but for me, the Pokemon that swing the matchup into Cobra's favor was Iron Hands,
Okay.
because with Southwest, Iron Hands can wall most of the attacks, at least unboosted, from Pelipper and Manaphy and Raging Bolt, and hit them hard back. So regardless of what Cobra would have brought, Iron Hands was going to do very well. And as you said, Quillfish was a good defensive check against both of Rolder's Swift Swimmers.
Absolutely.
But on the opposite side, Manaphy, if it does set up, was uh, looking very strong against Cobra. So it could have gone either way. But I
Yes.
think that Iron Hands by itself does swing a little bit the matchup onto Cobra's favor.
All right, fair enough. So, in looking at the actual results of the game, we do see that it was, in fact, Cobra that did win this game 1-0. As I said, no upload for this game. But from what I can tell from the numbers about the game, it was a very close game, a very competitive game. It seemed like on Cobra's side, his beloved Segment Steve, the Dunsparce, did put in quite a bit of work there.
Yeah, yeah. He
Um,
messaged me earlier this week and he asked me an advice.
yeah.
And you should know why, because the advice was about choice specs the Dunsparce.
There you go. Well, yeah, that's a familiar set to me, um, but yeah. So they
Yeah, so it put a lot of work, which I'm very happy to see.
oh yeah, definitely,
Be-
definitely. And then I would
Because so the reason why I thought choice specs Boom Burst was going to do well, Cobra Rolder doesn't have any steel type, as you see,
yeah,
and his only normal resist is Basculegion, and Basculegion is more an offensive Pokemon because I wouldn't personally switch Basculegion into the Dunsparce. So he
definitely a big
had
risk.
Cobra had the free opportunities to fire those boom bursts.
Yep,
So no
absolutely.
surprise here.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say it does look like Manaphy did put some work in on Rolder's side as well. But in
Yeah,
the end,
yeah, Manaphy. Yeah, as we discussed earlier, like Manaphy was going to do well.
absolutely. But yeah, so like I said, unfortunately, no game for that one. But definitely looks to be a really close one, really solid one
Yeah,
there. Which
yeah.
is
I believe that Overclock will miss the gun shots,
did it?
if I
Okay.
remember correctly.
Well, that would be devastating.
I don't know how much it mattered since we didn't see it again, but
Fair
I
enough.
think there was one crucial moment where I think Rolder was complaining about. I think it was a gun shot miss.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're gonna get to one crucial moment in one of our other games down the road as well. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I can
but
guess which
yes, you can guess what that's going to be, but yeah. So moving on from that game, that is going to bring us to the matchup of RK9er and his West Texas Arcanines taking on Pokemaster 88 and his California Trailblazers. So looking at this match on paper, obviously on RK9ers side, you've got stuff like the Latias, the Weevil, the Don Fan, and the Entei, really solid stuff. The Terra Captains, Inteleon, and Electros, also very threatening. Um, and then, of course, you've got the Lucario and the Superior, which could definitely do work. On Pokemaster's side, he's got the Meowscarada, of course, the mascot, Iron Moth and Skarmory, Hitmontop, Terra Captain, along with Terra Captain Alolan Raichu. Kind of the mini electric terrain strategy on this team here with Iron Moth, Alolan Raichu, and Pincurchin, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yep, and then of course, obviously the Swampert, very and Florges, very defensive powerhouses as well. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I do think Pokemaster has the edge in this one for a couple different reasons, but a big one is the Meowscarada because it seems like Meowscarada has great coverage into Arcaniner's team. Um, so there's that, and then I don't know, just the utility and the defensive synergy as well on Pokemaster's team seems to match up relatively well here against Arcaniner. But what do you think about it?
I think that they both have powerful threats against each other, and what made me think that Pokemaster has the edge was not really offensive inclined Pokemon, but more of who has the best defensive answers to the threats, right?
All right.
And when you were talking about Meowscarada, uh, well, on Arcaniner's side, the best things to defensive Pokemon he has are Donphan, which is weak to grass, and I guess Electros and Superior, who wouldn't enjoy switching into Meowscarada
Mm-hmm.
either, right?
Yeah.
And Pokemaster has better walls, say against Vivile. He has Hitmontop and Skarmory against Latias. He has Florges, so even Hydreigon. So I felt like they both have powerful offensive stuff against each other, but Pokemaster has the edge in the defensive Pokemon that can stand up to those threats.
Fair enough. Absolutely. Makes sense to me. So, when we look at the actual match results here, we will see that it was, in fact, Pokemaster that did win this game 2-0. I did think this was a very good game, actually. I thought that they spent a lot of time struggling for position, especially in the early to middle of the game. I feel like this was a pretty well-rounded game all in all. I felt like there were good plays and bad plays on both sides. I felt like there were a little bit of hacks on both sides as well. I think at one point, Arcaniner got like two. I think it was. I forget if it was simultaneous or not, but like two critical hits almost back to back on Pokemaster that was a big turning point. And then
I do
also,
remember the critical hit he got against Florges
yeah,
on
that
Volt
took the
Switch, which
Florges out.
mattered.
Yep, with the
Yeah, yeah,
Electros.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but
The
then also
Electros.
there was a freeze on that Pokemaster got on Arcaniner as well, which was pretty important. Um, but
Yeah.
additionally, I will also say Inteleon did some work on Arcaniner's side. That Terra Captain Inteleon is definitely nothing to sneeze at. If you go Terra Water, with the snipe shot and the scoop lens critical hit increase. Those critical hits are going to hurt anything, just massive damage. But the big story I think here is the Meowscarada on Pokemaster's side just went absolutely nuts. Got like what 4 or 5 kills I think. Took
Oh,
out
five, yeah,
yep,
five, which
took
is
out
crazy.
almost the whole team. And some of that was like opportunistic revenge kills, which Meowscarada is good for. But other kills it got were I want to say a little bit due to the fact that to a couple of errors that Arcaniner made, I think. But either way, Meowscarada just cleaned up at the end of the game and just did a ton of work.
Yeah, I think Pokemaster on his season does very well so far. I'm very proud because he prepares well every game, and he not only prepares well, but he executes his plans and play style. Like he knows what each Pokemon on his team are supposed to do, and he carries it out pretty
Yeah,
much to a T, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a few coaches that you can say that about in this league for sure. I think Pokemaster has definitely had a pretty good record here in the BHDL, but I do agree with you. I think this season he's definitely upped his game, and he's been performing at a higher level for sure this season. And it definitely has showed, more specifically in this game as well. It's definitely showed. So um, definitely a good showing for him there. So. But moving on to our next one, we are going to come to the game of Brandon and the Piedmont Triad Kickers versus Biridu and the Atacama Tyrannitars. So, looking at this one on paper, of course, you see on Brandon's side, he's got the power of the Urshifu Rapid Strike and the Cinderace, Terra Captain Whimsicott, of course, and the Archaludon and the Thunderous Incarnate form, which, as I think I mentioned, called out before, looks a little familiar. Should look a little familiar to you, Ray.
Yeah, yeah, it
But
looks very familiar.
but then he's
And all
also
the great Pokemon, yeah.
yes, but he's also got utility in the Forretress. He's got Terra Captain Flygon as well, which is a powerhouse, and the Alolan Muck, very very solid defensive Pokemon as well. Pair that up against Biridu's squad, and of course he's got the Iron Treads and the Chi-Yu, Ogre Pond Wellspring, very powerful stuff with the Salamence and the Azumarill. Terra Captains, Kilowattrel, and Muck are big threats, and of course the Uxie is a defensive menace as well. Um, so when I look at this matchup on paper, I do think that Biridu has the edge in this one. I think that his offensive threats just seem to match up pretty well against Brandon. I know Brandon has pretty good offensive threats in his own right here, so I don't know that I would say it's a runaway in Biridu's favor, but I would give him a slight edge as far as the power. I think Biridu's power that he's got on his team just seems like it has great coverage against Brandon's team. But what do you think about it?
I absolutely agree with everything that you said. And as good as Brandon's team is defensively, he doesn't really have a fire resist to Chiyu. Both Urshifu and Cinderace are pretty frail, especially like if Chiyu decides to go specs. They don't Urshifu and Cinderace don't switch into Chiyu's overheat. And
Yeah,
as much as I like Arcaludon, what made me realize in the last season that it's not as amazing as I hoped it to be. It's a dragon type that doesn't resist fire and fairy type, and a steel type that doesn't resist fairy. So that's a double-edged sword with that typing. And
absolutely.
uh, I also thought that Kilowattrel is going to be very strong in this particular game, since Flygon is hit very hard by Hurricane, right? And we didn't really expect Pikachu as much as I like Pikachu.
Actually, that I just realized in looking at these teams, it's the matchup of the two Terra captains that lead to a shallow roster a little bit on both sides. Hope you got your vodka
Uh,
handy, um,
uh,
but but yeah, no, I wouldn't have expected that either.
so
Um,
I would give, yeah, I would have given an edge to Biradu's team as well in this particular game.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So,
It
um,
also, we forgot to mention, Cap,
what's
it
that?
was also the Battle of Max.
Oh yeah, I didn't even realize that. Alolan Muck versus Standard Muck. Yes, I didn't even realize
Yeah,
that.
I
One of
don't believe they did match against each other, but that would have been a fun sight
yes,
to see.
that would have been fun to see as well. True, true. So when we
Oh
look at the
yeah, if we are talking about their rosters,
yeah,
we have three former doubters on Brandon's side, and then we also have well, Springogre opponent Azumarill on Birado's side, so
I was just gonna
five
say,
former doubters.
I was gonna say two coaches that perhaps have taken a lot out of your playbook here. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
very interesting. So, but yeah, when we look at the match result here, we will see that it was in fact Biridu that did win this game 3-0. I thought this was a good game actually. Again, early to mid game struggle for position. Um, I felt like both coaches had some pretty cool sets on deck. Overall, I do feel like Biridu prepped for this game better and did play a bit better than Brandon did. Just watching the
Hmm.
game, I felt like Biridu was kind of making the plays, and you would expect that from him because he has been a very very successful coach here in the BHDL. In fact, one of only three coaches who's qualified for the playoffs in all three prior seasons here. So yeah, you would expect no less from Biridu, but he did definitely do a
Yeah,
good job.
absolutely. He's an amazing coach, and I think it's not really hard to say that. I don't think many people will disagree that his team is among the strongest this season. With how he built it, it's just so scary both offensively and defensively.
Yes, yeah, I believe he was one of the S ranked teams when we did the power rankings a little bit ago here, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
Very consistent coach all around. But uh,
About this game, I do think that Kilowattrel did a lot of work, and also Salamence, which I was proud of because this Salamence he used is actually the shiny bacon that I found by accident, and I was like, I already have one. Can you take one from me? And he said, sure. And to
nice,
see that he used it well,
nice, very nice.
very proud moment.
Oh, that is awesome. That's an
That's why
awesome
he
bit.
named it. I'm not sure if you remember. That's why he called it Raimundo.
Oh, that makes sense to me. I actually didn't know that, so I because I saw the name and I was a little bit confused about it, but I get it now. So that's an interesting
Yeah, yeah,
bit of
that's a
background
nice,
information.
interesting backstory. Yeah.
Yes. As far as the Kilowattrel, I do want to mention one thing I thought was a little strange. Um, I thought it was a little strange that the Kilowattrel was Volt Absorb, but then it was also Terra Ground on Biridu's set this
Ah,
week.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was a little strange, but it's funny because it actually ended up working out in his favor because at one point he brings the Kilowattrel in before it was able to Terra on an incoming electric move from the Thunderous, I believe it was, and got the Volt Absorb. And then yeah, then he went Terra Ground a little bit after that, but yeah, I thought that was kind of an interesting conflict in my mind, kind of almost a conflict of interests because it seemed unnecessary to be Volt Absorb if you were going to be Terra Ground. But like I said, it worked out for him because he wasn't terrestrialized yet, and he was able to come in and block the electric move. Um,
That's actually a very interesting interaction that I don't really know how it works. If
yeah,
you switch a Volt Absorb Pokemon, which is a ground type, will it heal you first or will you be immune just without any?
that's actually a good question, and I don't know the answer to that either. That's something we got to research
Yeah,
at some point. But um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Maybe Birado knows that and that's why he used it.
maybe that is possible. The other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to say about this game is I did notice that it seemed like there were a little bit of hacks against Brandon in this game. I noticed there was a, speaking of gunk shot misses, I think there was a gunk shot miss
Oh,
on
yeah.
Brandon's side,
Yeah.
and there was also a, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was a flinch with Kilowattrel at one point,
Oh, yeah. The
um,
flinch on Thunderous. Yeah.
which
That
was
was
kind of
pretty. Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of devastating at the time that it happened. Now, I don't know that I could say I don't think either one of those games those hacks decided the game, but they
Hmm.
definitely didn't help Brandon at all, and they definitely made it a lot more of an uphill battle for him, especially the
I think they not they don't they didn't exactly match her in result wise, but
yeah.
what they did, I think it. for Brandon specifically, maybe they made him less focused on the battle and more maybe sad about it, right?
Yes, that is
So kind
possible.
of took his attention away.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
discouraging, perhaps. Yeah, and
discouraging. Yeah, that's more. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, he may not have won the game despite the hacks. I mean, maybe it would have been closer. We don't know. But
Yeah. As for the gang shot miss, I think the gang shot miss was actually more beneficial for him because it allowed his Flygon to find the moment to Dragon Dance
true,
in the
true.
end.
Yeah, I think he even said that at the time, actually, which is a good point. So, which is, strange because you don't typically think of missing a move as a good thing. But in certain situations like that, like you said, it can be because it allowed the Salamence at -2 special attack to stay alive, which provided the
Yeah,
opportunity
yeah, yeah,
for the Flygon to Dragon Dance. So, but yeah, I do want to say also, I do think in watching this game, I don't feel like Brandon played the best game. Like I said, I think Biridu played a little bit better than he did in this game.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
There was little stuff like that that just kind of came through, but yeah, it was a solid game all around. I would say for sure. So. But moving on to our next one, that is going to bring us to my game, actually, as I lead the Philadelphia Pidgeys into battle against the reigning BHDL champion, Anastasia, and Team Aquamarine. So, obviously, on my side, the team hasn't really changed at all up until this point. We've got, of course, the Sneasler and the Indeedee Unburdened combo there. We've got the defensive core with the Terra Gudra, Scissor, Rotom Wash, Terra Mudsdale. Of course, utility with the Grimmsnarl and the Drifblim, um, and so forth. Versus Anna's team. Of course, she's got the Dragapult. She's got the Primarina and the Corviknight, that strong Dragon Fairy Steel Core. Ogerpon Hearthflame is always a powerhouse. Ukadugi could be a powerhouse offensively or defensively. Incineroar, of course, a personal favorite of hers and very versatile Pokemon. And then, of course, the Terra Captains, Galarian Articuno and Bellibolt. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I'll give you a little bit of an insight into what I was thinking going into this matchup, since it was my game, obviously. So looking at this matchup on paper, when I was preparing for this game, I was very torn between whether or not Unburdened Sneasler or Choice Sneasler would be the best bring this week. Because I was looking at her
Mm,
team and I was thinking, like, I could see possibilities where Unburdened Sneasler could potentially get a sweep going, but at the same time, I was like, I'm probably going to be looking at Max Fizdef Corviknight and or Max Fizdef Ukadugi, which unfortunately could present problems. I'm also looking at Intimidate Incineroar, so I ultimately decided against the Unburdened set just because I felt like there were too many ways that she could get out of it. Realistically, that I was like, it just doesn't seem like the best option. Um, I thought, honestly, I kind of thought the teams were relatively evenly matched on paper for the most part. The one thing that I did have kind of a problem with was the Dragapult, and the reason being is that Dragapult, other than Sneasler either being unburdened or Choice Scarf, I think everything else on my team, including a lot of Scarfers, would be outsped by Dragapult. So I think, like, if I would Scarf, say, bring like Scarf Indeedee or Scarf Hisuian Arcanine, I think Dragapult still outspeeds them, which is kind of abysmal for me. And then with Sneasler, obviously I could Scarf Sneasler and then I outspeed Dragapult. But if the Dragapult also happens to be Scarf, then I won't. So that was
yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
problem for me with speed control looking at this match, just with that Dragapult, which is pretty much in a speed tier of its own. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty even match on paper. But what do you think about it?
I think it was a pretty even match, and which is very ironic that you mentioned the debate against between Unburdened Sneasler and Poison Touch, right?
Right.
Because I expected you to use an Unburdened Swords Dance Sneasler under terrain and possibly get a sweep going in the end, because I thought that it kind of matches well
Okay.
against her team. But in return, I also thought that Dragapult matches well into you. So it was the main threats that you, like you said, were afraid of. And speaking of other Pokemon, I think that Arcanine works best against her defensive Pokemon because Corviknight and Incineroar are hit hard by Arcanine's
Yep.
stab moves, right? And Primarina doesn't want to switch into Head Smash, and I'm not sure if Hisuian Arcanine actually gets Wild Charge.
Oh, it does
But
actually. It does
yeah,
get wild charge as
so
well, yeah.
yeah, so
But
I
funny
also thought
enough,
Arcanine.
yep, I was gonna say
Go
funny
on.
enough. I think I calced it, and head smash actually does more damage. Like neutral effective head smash actually does more damage than super effective wild charge, which is why I didn't have it. Um, I
I
do,
see.
I
Okay.
do agree with you 100% because one of the little nuances when I was looking at the team building for this game, is I was thinking as much as I want to bring Scissor, I just can't bring it because she's got like Corviknight that could be max Fizdef, Ukadoogie that could be max Fizdef, two fire types in Ogerpon Hearthflame and Incineroar. So
Mogurpon and yeah,
yep. So I was just
Mogurpon.
like, there's no way I can bring Scissor to this game. But then I'm also looking at the team, and I made a similar observation that you made, as I was like, there's really nothing on this team that wants to switch into Hisuian Arcanine like at all. Like not one thing that wants to switch into Hisuian
Yeah.
Arcanine, which is why I actually looking into the future a little bit, I brought the substitute on Hisuian Arcanine because I was just thinking there's really nothing on this team that wants to switch into Hisuian Arcanine. So um, but yeah, I had the
And in return, similar to your Arcanine, she had a Galarian Articuno, and I think your team didn't really have good answers to it either. I think I noticed that you brought defensive Grimmsnarl just for that Articuno because it was looking so strong into you.
yep. So peering into the future, there, I will say that it was uh, Grimmsnarl came to this game, yeah, for two reasons actually. One was the Dragapult, and one was the Galarian Articuno for sure. Um, I was on a similar wavelength with that, which looking into the match results, was I guess I'll just get into now. We will see that it was in fact me that did take the victory in this match, 3-0. It was a really good game, I thought. There was a struggle once again, a struggle for position early to mid game in this one. I will say I was, going back to the touching on the Grimmsnarl. I was, well, going back even another step. I was proud of the Hisuian Arcanine, although unfortunately that met its demise at the hands of an infiltrator Dragapult, which I full well expected that was going to be a possibility. I wasn't obviously didn't know what kind of coverage it may have had, which unfortunately it did have coverage, and was infiltrator. So if not for that, I think that Hisuian Arcanine could have gone nuts in that situation. Um, but also, I was actually particularly proud of this Grimmsnarl that I brought this week. I think Grimmsnarl was kind of an unsung hero of this game, just due to the fact that it checked Dragapult very well, and it also checked Galarian Articuno very well too. And I was able to kind of catch her off guard in the late game with the Grimmsnarl, um, having the super effective coverage for the Articuno. Um, and was able to, basically knock it out in two shots before it could really do a lot. Um, Most of the time, people do expect support Grimmsnarl sets, and while that is a very good thing that Grimmsnarl can do, a lot of people sleep on the fact that Grimmsnarl is actually very potent offensively as well. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so I was pretty proud of the Grimmsnarl and the work it put in this week. Of course, I would be remiss. Well, I will say that I thought both myself and Anna prepped and played pretty well in this game. But I would be remiss, obviously, if I didn't mention the elephant in the room that I have alluded to earlier, which was there was one critical moment in this game where the Hacks gods came for Anna, and that was in the form of in a moment where I had my Azelf in at +2 with a life orb off a nasty plot, in against Anna's Incineroar, and I end up the Incineroar was at full HP. I end up getting a critical hit on a Thunderbolt, taking the Incineroar out in one shot. This was about early to middle of the game, I believe. And that was a very, very big momentum shift in the game. Because up until that point of the game, everything was relatively even. We were like I said, we were kind of just struggling for position up until that point in the game. And obviously, we know for a fact that the crit mattered because the Incineroar was at full. Um, but after that crit and that Incineroar went down in that moment, I just at that from that point forward in the game, I didn't really feel like I was at risk of losing the game from that point forward. I felt like I had control of the match after that because that was just such a pivotal moment in the game, getting rid of the Incineroar because Incineroar is obviously a great Pokemon for utility and defense, and it was a huge deal for me that really swung the game in my favor. But yeah, unfortunately, the Hack Scuds come for us all eventually.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's unfortunately what
yeah,
happens a lot with Anna. She prepares very well against all of the Pokemon, like against Emerald. She had multiple berries just for the situation, for the correct situation, and
yeah,
unfortunately, like the luck isn't there, and this Incineroar crit was detrimental, as you said. That if Azelf went down at that moment, I think that the game shifts majorly into her favor, right? Because
yep,
uh, Azelf with Nasty Plot is gone, and you have to think.
yeah, yeah. No, I think definitely that was a like I said, that was the big turning point in the game. Um, I'm not gonna say I think I would have lost if not for that, but I
Yeah,
definitely think
it was still pretty early to say like
it would have been a
which,
different game. It would have
yeah,
100% been a different game
it would
at
have
that
been
point.
closer.
Yes, and
Yeah.
Incineroar, even if without the crit, Incineroar would have taken massive chip, which is kind of my thought process. Because I remember going through that turn before it happened, and I was like right up to the end of the timer, thinking like, what am I gonna do? Because I didn't really have a good switch to Incineroar, so I was just kind of my thought
Yeah, I
process.
think you went for the correct play because if you chip Incineroar down, like
You could
you
take it.
can
I could take it
always,
out with Arcanine or Sneasler or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
Yep, that was my thought
yeah.
process, and that's why I did what I did because I was like, well, I need to get chip on this Incineroar. I know it's going to do like 50, 60%, which is great chip. It's going to be in range of just about anything else at that point afterward. So, and I knew it was boots,
I do
so
want to add that this was the only game where I thought it was pretty much even
yep,
team wise. So
gotcha.
I thought it like there was no real
Clear winner or
winner team wise, clear
clear
winner. Yeah,
advantage. Yeah, and I think
yeah,
when it comes to games like this, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think when it comes to games like this, where it's just so close, when you have two teams that are very evenly matched, it just comes down to one hack sometimes in one critical moment in the game, unfortunately. And like I said,
yeah. I agree. I agree here. Yeah.
yep. And like I said, I'm not going to say I think that I would have lost if not for that crit, but it definitely changed the complexion of the game drastically. Because like I said, after that point, I felt like I was in control the rest of the game after that. That's what I'll say. So, um, but yeah, unfortunately, these things happen. That we've all been there, and we've all been on both sides of the hacks. I think so. But I think that doesn't take
But
away.
despite the Thunderbolt crit, I like even with these hacks, I think you played really well, and so far you show like another great start of the season, just like last season.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I think, like I said, I think despite the crit, it was a very solid game despite that as well. So, um,
I like the sets that you bring, especially like you said that Arcanine and Grimmsnarl in
oh,
particular.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was particularly proud of those two sets. Everything else was more standard than anything, but yeah, I was really happy with those. I was so not to belabor the point too much, but I was so hoping like at the moment when. I think I took out her Dunsparce with the Arcanine, and then she came in with Dragapult, and I was just thinking like, please just let this not be Infiltrator Dragapult because I'll be in such a good
Yeah,
position because I have Hisuian Arcanine behind the substitute,
behind the
like yeah,
substitute.
and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
please just don't be Infiltrator, and it was, and I was like, well, it was like
And she had
50-50,
surf, and she had surf
and she had
exactly for Arcanine.
yeah,
Yeah,
she may
which
have
is
had that for
a very
Mudsdale.
smart prep. Which is a very smart prep.
Yep, absolutely. I was gonna say
Mm.
she may have had it for Mudsdale as well, but yeah, the having the surf on there, I was like, well, she has surf and she has infiltrator, so damn. But it was fun to dream that Hisuian Arcanine would have carried the game, but it still did work, and like I said, I thought it was a solid game overall.
It's a common tradition at this point that your Arcanines go down by unexpected special attacks.
Yeah, pretty much. I was gonna say that's unfortunately Arcanine just seems to die to a special attack every time it comes out, but what can you do? So, but yeah, moving on from that one, that is going to go ahead and bring us to your game, actually, Ray, and that is you and the Mamoswine Doubters, of course, taking on Silver and the Legends of Lapras. So, looking at this matchup on paper, of course, you've got your powerhouses, you've got your Latios, your standard form Ogerpon, the Terrapagos, of course. Um, Great utility with the Tinkaton, the mascot Mamoswine appearing, of course, and then you've got, of course, the um, Terra Captain's Lantern and Blaziken, very, very strong as well. Matching that up against Silver, we have on his side, of course, he's got the Iron Valiant, the Pheasantipity, the Hisuian Gudra, that um, Sun, little bit of a Sun combo there with Walking Wake and Torkoal, and then Terra Captain's Umbreon and Ambipom could put in work, and then of course the mascot in Lapras as well. So
Yeah.
looking at this matchup on paper, I do feel like you have the advantage in this game. I think he does. It's pretty close, honestly, on paper because he does have some Pokemon like the Hisuian Gudra that seem like they match up pretty well against your team defensively. Of also, it felt like the Walking Wake could have potentially had a good time against your team as well. But then on your side, of course, you have stuff like the Terrapagos, which just never wants to die. And then, of course, the Terra Captains, Blaziken and Lantern felt like they could put some work in as well. But obviously, this is your game, so I'll kind of let you give me more of an insight into what you were thinking going into this one.
Yeah, so I'll start with what I expected to see from his team. I did think that Umbreon and Gudra would both come because they match well against Latios and Terrapagos, as you've said. Like those are strong uh, wall breakers, I would say. And also in Gudra's case, it has Sepsiper, which works well against Ogerpon, right? So uh, I also expected Torkoal to come because it enables Walking Wake, which by far I was scared of Walking Wake the most.
Yeah,
Uh, because in the sun it gets a speed boost, and if he slaps a choice specs on his Walking Wake, besides Lantern, it demolishes my team. So my if I saw Walking Wake, my only hope of stopping it was to switch in Lantern and just hope that I can wear it down eventually. And when he didn't bring it, it was a such sigh of relief,
I can
since I
imagine.
don't have to.
Yes.
Yeah, but other than that, Ambipom looked very strong since it does outspeed Latios and Ogerpon
Yeah.
by a little bit since it's 115 base speed, and it that's the reason why I brought my Tornadoes, which had Hammer Arm, because it's even faster than Ambipom, and I was like, I need to outfit this thing because if I don't, it can just start wrecking
Wrecking you.
my team slowly. Yeah,
Yep.
I do
Absolutely.
think I had a little advantage, but it was just a little, right?
Yep. I would agree with that for sure. So, but yeah, looking at the actual match result here, we will see that it was you that did take the win in this match 3-0. Um, I will say, looking, so there were a few takeaways to me with this game. First thing I want to say is I do feel like you prepped and played better than Silver in this game, which isn't a giant shock, quite honestly, because you don't have the
Thank you.
accolades that I mean, not no knock against Silver, but I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again, is I think there's kind of a general consensus in the BHDL, just due to the record that you've had here, that you're kind of like the measuring stick almost in this league because you've done so well. So I think as I've said many times, betting against you is done at your own peril. But
I
um,
appreciate your kind
oh, absolutely.
compliments.
I
Thank
just
you. Yeah.
calling it like I see it as always. But yeah, I do feel like there were some errors that Silver made in both in prep and in play. So I felt like it
Yeah.
was he didn't bring the walking wake as you said, which could have done work to your team. He didn't bring the. I don't think he brought the Gudra either, did he?
Yeah, that was a huge shock for me because again, like Latios can't really hurt Gudra and Terapagos too.
Yep.
So
Or Ogrepon for that matter, really. So
no Agirpon, yeah, it was looking very good into my team.
yeah, so
Uh,
those were kind of tactical errors in my opinion, I think. But additionally, there were some plays in the game that he made that I thought were also kind of tactical errors. There was one in particular
mhm.
that kind of stick out to me, and that was there was this one turn that I don't remember why, but he just for some reason switched his Ambipom in, and then it just died to an attack, and it was already Terran, so it was his Terra Captain, so it was just kind of like he just threw it away, which was kind of strange to me. Because, like you said, it had good speed control against most of your Pokemon.
Yeah. On that particular turn, I think he expected me to switch into Lantern.
Gotcha.
And after that, since Lantern was such a huge threat to his Iron Valiant at that point,
Hmm.
and if I did that, my Vising was down, and Vising was my physical wall, so I think he had Choice Bandit Terra Normal double hit, and it would have knocked out something. I think that was his prediction, like my lantern switching and then he clicks double hit into something that
Yeah, and
didn't pay
something
off.
dies. Yeah,
Yeah,
sometimes you make
the
the
reason
risky play and
why,
it doesn't pay off for sure.
yeah, it was definitely risky, but I can understand it. The reason why I didn't switch into lantern on that particular turn was my Blaziken was KO'd by Psychic, and I thought that his Iron Valiant was special, and I wanted to preserve my Southwest Lantern for Iron Valiant, right? I didn't want it to take any cheap damage, and I didn't want to switch it out.
Yeah,
So it worked out in my favor. Even though his Valiant turned out to be mixed, just because he only revealed Psychic by that point made me question.
of
Maybe
course.
he's fully special.
Gotcha. Absolutely. So
But I do agree that team wise, not bringing Walking Wake and Gudra was more of a mistake because they both worked well into my team, and he did say that he was expecting Lantern against Walking Wake, but this is only one Pokemon, and besides Lantern, Walking Wake would have just destroyed my team, I feel like. So
yeah,
that was his
fair,
error in his team building.
fair points. Fair points. I would also
I
say
also want to note Terapagos' performance.
yeah, I was just
Uh,
about to say that. He took the words right out. I was going to say the other thing I wanted to note was the fact that Terrapagos went nuts in this game, got like what 4 or 5 kills, something like that. Uh,
4 kills, yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So massive. Just picking, tanking hits and picking Pokemon off. That's just what Terrapagos does. I did note.
Once his Umbreon went down, I
Yep.
felt like so in my mind, he didn't bring Gudra, which walls Terapagos, and his Umbreon is down, his special wall, so I can just start clicking Terra Starstorm, or in case of Phazandipity, Earthquake, and
Yep.
start wearing his team down eventually.
Yep, absolutely. I was going to
That's
say
what
on the
happened.
point of the
Yeah.
Pheasantipity, I was going to also say that there was it was a little bit stally at the end of the game there, where he was just roosting his life away with the Pheasantipity, which at that point I'm just like, I get if you're stalling, if you're trying to like recover stall, and there's a chance that you can get out of the situation that you're in.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
that, but there was literally no way out of that situation for him. Like the only way out is if somehow you would have run out of PP for Earthquake before he ran out of PP for Roost, which wouldn't have worked because Earthquake has double the PP of Roost. So,
And what's even more ironic, that all was happening,
mhm.
and my time was like 3:30 in the morning.
Oh jeez. Yeah, so you're just like come on, accept your fate already.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there's
I
like
mean
I
I
said,
can get the play because his roosts were recurring like 10-15% more than I was doing
yeah,
with
but
Black Sludge, but so at that point I still had a healthy Tornadoes with acrobatics.
Right.
which were doing like 45% to Fezan DPT, and I was like, even if my Terapagos goes down, the game is pretty much over, right? So
Yeah.
I found those a little bit
Yeah, he
excessive,
was
I think, but yeah,
clinging to life for no particular reason. But I guess I can't fault him in a way. I can't fault him for that because maybe he's thinking like, oh, maybe you'll get enough low rolls that he can live and attack. But I don't know. At that point, like I said, it didn't seem like there was any way out for him at that point. But um,
yeah. But overall, I still think that he played well. Besides this Mbipom mistake, I liked his Restock, Lapra set.
yep, that was
Of course,
interesting for
Choice
sure.
Bandit Mbipom, Choice Bandit Mbipom looked very strong into my team.
Yeah, definitely some creative sets on his side. Definitely have to shout that out. But yeah, that is going to go ahead and bring us to our last game here, and that is going to be Emerald Miner and the Demolition Force taking on the notorious HIM and the Brooklyn Baxcaliburs. So, on Emerald's side, of course, you can see the power with the Greninja, the Annihilate, bulky offense, of course, Metagross as well. Um, he's got that Enamorus, which is definitely a big powerhouse in its own right. The Cryogonal is great utility as a Terra Captain as well, could be a big X factor. Moltres, more bulky offense with that and the Dragalge and the Sandy Shocks, and then of course Terra Captain Lycanroc, midday form that is. And then on HIM's side, of course, he's got the mascot, the Baxcalibur, Pokemon that Ray here is no stranger to, of course.
Uh, huge,
Um,
huge respect for Excalibur
yes,
being the mascot, by the way.
but of course, but he definitely took it a step farther with that chilly reception, Galarian Slow King there. The something that you
Yeah,
you felt you didn't want to unleash on the league, but HIM
yeah, I
decided he
thought,
wasn't
yeah,
gonna do
yeah,
that. He was gonna do it. But then, of course, he's got the Excadrill and the Terra Captains, Typhlosion, Quagsire, and Doxbun. Once again, I think I've said this before, and I'll say it again many times. Best Terra Captain loadout of any team in the league, in my opinion. And then, of course, he's got that Tornadus Therian and the Blastoise, which could be a big menace as well. So looking at this matchup on paper, I do think that Emerald has the advantage here. His offense just seems particularly potent into HIM's team. Um, I think that the combination of the bulk and the offense on Emerald's side just seems like it might overwhelm HIM potentially. But what do you think about this one on paper?
On this particular matchup, I actually think it was the most uh, one-sided for me
Okay.
personally matchup, and I want to say it's mostly because of the sheer offensive power that Emerald had against HIM.
Yep.
Because if you notice that Metagross does great against all of his mons except Typhlosion and like Thunderous. And I also thought that Greninja and Annihilate went pretty hard. Like if you all this combination of Pokemon and even Sandy, right? Thunderous can't really touch Sandy. Sandy is good against Slowking and Excadrill and Garganical and Typhlosion, which all are Pokemon weak to ground. And the Pokemon that are Blastoise and I guess for Thunders you have Power Gem. So that's all of Emerald's Pokemon are just so strong. And if you add that up to hazard staking,
Yes.
if he uses rocks or spikes and switches into Annihilate every time, HIM's team is just going to get worn down eventually. So I thought like Emerald has a huge edge in this particular game.
Yeah, especially I would agree. Especially those top three Pokemon, the Greninja, the Annihilate, and the Metagross, just seems so good into HIM's team. Greninja for the versatility, Annihilate for the fact that he has HIM essentially has no ghost resistances on his team unless you count the purifying salt Garganackle, I think,
Oh yeah,
um,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is
He didn't have
kind of,
any
I
ult
guess you kind of
switching. So.
have to count that. And then of course the Metagross, just the amazing coverage and typing. But yeah, looking at the actual match result, we will see that it was in fact Emerald Miner that won this game 5-0, so a huge win in Emerald Miner's favor. Um, I do feel like Emerald did prepare and play this game better than HIM did. I know there was some behind the scenes issues going on with this game with the comp and with trying to get everything to line
Yeah,
up. I don't
yeah.
know if that played really a factor in the result of the game or not. I'd like to think it didn't, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, it definitely felt like Emerald Miner pretty much controlled this game top to bottom. Like it didn't. Similarly with our the first game we talked about with the Scorpion and the Stefan, it didn't feel like
Yeah,
Emerald
yeah,
Miner was
yeah.
really in danger at any point in this game, as you would, from a 5-0 victory, you would expect. Um, Metagross,
What I
obviously,
notice, what I notice about HIM
yeah,
personally, uh, a lot of the times when he switches Caliber in, even if he has spinners on his team,
mm,
he switches in Caliber before he spins away the rocks. And as a former Caliber user,
hmm,
I noticed that now with Mammoth One, it's so much easier to do because Mammoth One isn't weak to rocks, and I take much less considerable damage from
yeah,
rocks. There is a lot of moments in the game where you just want to switch your hardest hitter in, right? But there are rocks on the side, so
yeah,
uh, yeah, Excalibur suffers from hazards a lot more than Mammoth Wine.
yeah, absolutely. That is a big difference, and yeah, I see. I will say I see that with the Bax caliber, yeah, like he definitely, that's a good point. He definitely seems to like switch the Bax caliber in willy nilly, kind of, and it seems like
Yeah,
you'd want to,
Excalibur is a very bulky Pokemon, but
but it's
it's
not
a
immortal.
difference between.
It's certainly not immortal.
Yeah,
It's
for sure. It's a difference if it's at full HP or it's at
yeah.
75%, if it makes sense, right?
Oh yeah, after for sure, for sure. So um,
So just an advice for HIM for the future.
well, I know he was looking
Uh,
for. I was just about to say. I know he was in a while. Last week I think it was. He was looking for words of wisdom, and the first thing I told him was I was like, "Talk to Ray." So HIM, if you're watching this video, if you want any Bax
yeah.
caliber pointers, you know where to go. But
Yeah, so definitely try to pin the hazards away before using Excalibur.
right.
Because if Excalibur comes at full HP and if it Dragon Dances, right, at the right moment, it's just such a devastating force.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely. And that's what I was going to say is this game in Emerald's favor basically just boiled down to the combination of hazards plus Metagross, right? So Metagross went nuts
yeah,
in this game, took out basically the whole team, like 4 or 5 Pokemon again, I want to say. Um, just went
Emerald's team
absolutely
in
nuts.
particular was so good against Excalibur, which is his main threat.
Yep.
And like said, Metagross and Annihilate, right?
Yeah.
Hard for
Yeah, it was.
Excalibur to deal with them.
Yep, I was going to say it was definitely a hard match on paper for HIM. It was an uphill battle for him to try to overcome, and unfortunately,
And
um,
even if we take Cap those offensive checks out, if Emerald has Cryogonal, right?
yep,
And if that Cryogonal, say, tears into steel with Levitate, it resists everything that Excalibur wants to do.
yep,
And I
absolutely.
do believe that Emerald had Terra Steel Flash Cannon on his Cryogonal.
Yes, yeah, that's a very smart
So,
counter as well. Yeah, so it was just
yeah.
like I said, it was a very uphill battle for HIM to try to overcome this week for sure, and the results kind of reflect that for sure. But but yeah, so that will do it for the matchups this week. Now, as I said, since we're post week 5 here, we are over the halfway point officially here in the regular season of the BHDL4. We are now going to start taking a look at the current standings. So here on the screen, you will see the current standings in the BHDL4 post week 5 with all the games played and recorded. Um, you will see quite the unique situation here in this, and we'll go over it. But essentially, right now, we functionally have a six-way tie at the top of the league right now. Six separate
Which
teams.
is crazy. Such a crazy sight.
Yes, six separate teams, all with a 4-1 record. Two of which are us, obviously, as you can see. But we are joined, of course, by Scorpion, by Pokemaster, Beeradu, and Abomination as well. A lot of very tried and true, seasoned BHDL competitors, decorated BHDL competitors, if you will, of course, on that list. Newcomer Abomination, of course. But yeah, all 4-1 records, all with varying differentials. Ranging from plus 13 to plus 7, obviously, with me bringing up the rear at the end of that list, of course, as you can see. Um, but yeah, just a crazy, crazy scene here about halfway through the league with all those coaches up there at the top. And then, of course, following not too far behind from that, we, of course, have Emerald Miner slash Heel Emerald coming
Yeah,
in.
the goat emerald, as I call him.
Yes, coming in as kind of the only coach currently on the board with like a somewhat even record, I would say. But a little bit more on the positive side, and then of course you've got your next set of coaches down, which would include Cobra, Lazy Boy, Rolder, Silver, and RK9er with those 2 and 3 records. A little bit of a negative differential on them, and
Yeah, and
then
that's like five people with the same 2 and 3 records.
yes, and then if you've got your next group of people down, you've got our reigning champion Anastasia, along with HIM and Stefan, all sitting at 4-1, kind of a getting to be a mounting high negative differential, and kind of sort of in that same boat you would put Brandon at 0 and
Hmm.
5. With actually, as I want to just kind of note as a side note, not a terribly low differential given an 0 and 5 record for -11, because that's an average of a 2-0 loss per game, which is actually not super bad. But
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree.
but yeah, so as far as the standings go and what this might mean as far as playoffs are concerned, obviously there's still a lot of league left to play, but we can kind of sort of start to see what playoffs might look like at this point in the league. And so I could kind of break this down, obviously, into a few different groups by ranking. And so that's kind of what we're going to do. So you can see, of course, the top six coaches there, as we had previously mentioned, with those 4-1 records. All of those coaches are sitting in a pretty decent spot right now as far as making it into playoffs. Not only because they have solid records and good differentials, but also because there's a pretty seismic gap in between them and the next coaches down, right? So aside from Emerald Miner, which is kind of like he's kind of like standing in the gap essentially, but
Yeah.
the all the coaches that are sitting at 4-1 right now are at a pretty sizable advantage over, aside from Emerald Miner, all the coaches that are sitting at 2 and 3, 1 and 4 records at this point. So that chasm means that it's not going to take a whole lot for those six coaches at the top to actually make playoffs at this point. Because I would say if those coaches can win maybe 2 out of their last 4 matches, they're going to be in playoffs pretty much guaranteed, I would think. Um,
I would also probably say that one win most likely is
yep.
enough
I
with
was just going to
such a
say,
huge differential.
yeah, I was going to say for the coaches with the higher differentials there on that list, for sure, even potentially even just one win out of the next 4 games would be a playoff spot guaranteed because of that giant gap
Yeah.
there, which is going to mean
The
a
main
couple.
reason for just one win for me is like the amount of coaches with 2 and 3 differential.
Yep. Yeah, there's so many coaches, which actually is going to bring me to my next point, which is that when you look at when you look down the list a little bit at all the coaches that are hovering at that 2 and 3 record, um, even the coaches that are at the 1 and 4 record are not super far behind them. I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight for that number 8 spot here in the playoffs. Like this is going to be
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you if you look at the top 6, potentially top 7 spots, so the top 6 to 7 spots, I would say based on how Emerald Miner performs the rest of the season. Um, those coaches have a high chance of getting in playoffs. Now, again, it's not guaranteed because hypothetically, if these coaches lose out at this point, any one of these coaches could still not make it. So that is still a possibility. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah.
but obviously, in playing the odds here, we have to, call it like that. But to my bigger point, um, for the number 8 and potentially the number 7 spot in these playoffs, it is going to be an absolute war between the rest of those coaches because there is such a big chasm, but also because there's so many coaches with that same record. Like you see, those 5 coaches all have the same record. 3 of them actually all have the same differential. Right around that
Yeah,
number 8.
-3. Yeah.
Exactly, right around that number 8 spot. So that number 8 spot is anybody's spot to take at this point. And like I said, depending on how good or bad Emerald Miner does, that number 7 spot could be up for grabs too. Um, so yeah, very interesting loadout at this point in the
Yes,
season.
how it's looking so far, Cap, I think that even the three coaches with 1-4 record can still make it in if they win the last four
Absolutely.
games. Right?
Yep. So I was going to say, as far as the, kind of going down that list there, as far as Emerald, since, I keep mentioning him only by name because he's kind of in a league of his own with his record, or in a situation of his own, I should say, with his record. Really, what he has to do is he has to win another 2 to 3 games and he can make it. For all of those coaches, basically, for all the coaches with a 2-3 or a 1-4 record, if any of those coaches win out at this point, it is that number 8 spot. Like I said, is anybody's game. So um, those coaches there. With those records, really what they need to do is they just need to win out, and that number 8 spot could be theirs at this point. Um, I will say, unfortunately, as far as Brandon, to single him out at the bottom there, side note, only coach with a perfect record this season thus far. Um, he really is in a situation where, though technically, mathematically, I don't think he's eliminated yet. He is in a situation where it's extremely unlikely that he could make it. Like, in order for him to have a shot, he would not only have to win out his last 4 games, he would also have to win by massive differentials, and he would need specific coaches to lose as well, in order
Mm.
to kind of sneak into that number 8 spot. But it's very much viable for just about every coach on the board, that number 8 spot, because I predict, based on the way the numbers have shaken out in this league so far, I predict at least one, if not potentially two, 5-4 records could make playoffs. Um, just
Yeah, yeah. I think 5-4 will be the
the sweet spot.
record you need. Yeah, you need to have to qualify into the playoffs.
Yep, I was going to say, at this point, with the numbers the way they are, I think if you hit, if any of those coaches that it's still possible, obviously, to do this, hit a 6-3 record, I think that's a guaranteed playoff appearance, no questions. If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
hit a 5-4, there's actually still a pretty good shot you can make it if you have that 5-4. And like I said, it's too early to say 100% sure, but um, I don't know if a 4-5 could make it, depending on the numbers. It's a little early to say that for sure, but anything's possible at this point. But yeah, that's just kind of the standings as they sit at this point. And yeah, we'll be definitely keeping an eye on these at the end of every week, just to kind of see if there's any movement and kind of where they go from here. Definitely, these next couple of weeks in the league are going to be critical because we're going to have a lot of jockeying for position, and these next couple of weeks are going to really um, see the kind of the playoff roster start to take shape. And there is an added incentive for the playoffs here, obviously, because this time around we're doing things a little bit differently, where the coaches that are in the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds at the end of the regular season are actually going to get to choose their opponents out of the coaches in the 5, 6, 7, and 8 positions. So a lot to fight for, going into the second half of the season here. So
And also, a friendly reminder: this
yes,
is the last week. This is the last week transactions can be made, so don't forget
yes,
if you want to change your team.
yes, anyone who still has transactions left, we are running out of time to make those transactions, so the teams will be locked in. Um, after
In my
week
similar
6.
fashion, I'm already out of transactions.
Already did all the tweaking that you wanted to, and
Yeah.
got your team how you want it. So, but yeah, I think that'll about do it for this one. So yeah, that is all of your BHDL4 Week 5 action, and of course the standings as they are right now for the league. So um, yeah, that is it for this one. Thanks for watching again, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, and/or subscribe if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. I'd like to thank my guest, none other than the Pokemon scholar and Viola himself, Raymon, for joining me to discuss all the exciting action and the standings. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. It was a big honor uh, to
Yes,
be to be with you today,
absolutely, no problem, man. Good time for sure. And so
for
yeah, we'll
sure.
be
Yeah.
coming back with the week 6 game and the week 6 recap coming your way soon. So stay tuned for that. That's it, and we'll see you next time.